Welcome back to America Decides. Thanks for staying with us. Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul has emerged as kind of a prominent critic of President Trump's approach to tariffs. Among the arguments he's recently made is they might not fit within the Constitution. Listen.
It's not only bad, tariffs are bad economically, it's not good form for a constitutional republic to have taxes raised by one person. When our Constitution was written, it said taxes originate in Congress, and more specifically, they originate in the House. So there's nothing about this that's consistent with our constitutional republic.
I want to bring in our political panel. Hyma was Chief of Staff to former DNC Chair Jamie Harrison. Maura Gillespie served as an advisor to former House Speaker John Boehner and former Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Hyma, let me start with you. Give me your evaluation from a Democratic perspective on what we've seen this week and Rand Paul's argument that whether you like them or not, there's a process that's not even being adhered to.
Yeah. Look, I think we said this before. I think Democrats have a lot of fodder to fight back on Donald Trump's agenda. So I think this week has made very clear that Donald Trump has done things unilaterally that are not going to make American lives better. And so I think Democrats, Cory Booker, senator from New Jersey, was just on TV yesterday, and he laid it out sort of very well. Democrats don't have to do anything except reiterate what Donald Trump's doing. And so he said he would take costs down. He has not taken costs down. He's actually added a tax to people with these tariffs. I was talking to the footwear industry today, the folk over there, and they were saying people are going to go from buying 3 pair of shoes to 1 pair of shoes. It's going to get increasingly more difficult to live in this country, and I think Democrats have to say that.
To that point, and I'm not a Nike customer, pro or con.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at what Nike did several years ago. Under urging from the U.S. government, it moved its manufacturing facilities out of China largely to Vietnam.
Correct.
Now they're in Vietnam, and Vietnam is going to face a 46% tariff.
Yep. I mean,
and so that creates an issue for the cost of a sneaker.
Yeah, and you're talking about families. If you think of a family of 5. The parents have to buy shoes, the kids have to buy shoes for school, and then think about the curricular activities they do: football, basketball, dance, all of that. And so I think people are going to start seeing these things affect their lives a lot sooner than they thought. And so Democrats are going to have to go back to the American people and say, this is bad, and Donald Trump is doing the wrong thing. However, this is our agenda. And so I think, Rand Paul was very, very sincere about his critiques about these tariffs. And it's all true. These tariffs are not going to make the economy better overnight. It's going to make it a lot harder to do things you want to do.
Maura, you're familiar with the conversations within Republican circles. And I know Rand Paul brought up the constitutional argument, not only because he believes in it, he's pretty consistent there, but I think he's hopeful that some Republicans might actually heed that as something that's worth considering, quite separate from whatever they may believe economically or politically about tariffs.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I don't often find myself on the same side as Rand Paul, but here we are. But he's right. Largely Republicans have lost their way as far as what we stand for. And the separation of powers, the importance of the Constitution, and recognizing where the authority comes from to make these decisions is important. But you're seeing Republicans largely place their trust in President Trump and hope that, these short-term pains, as he's calling them, will lead to those long-term gains. The unfortunate part is that right now it's a hypothetical. It is a potential long-term gain. There's no guarantees, and it's to be seen whether voters can hang on during these upheavals of grocery costs going up, of your clothing and your footwear going up, and some of these tariffs that are placed not based on individual cases and looking into the country, but by an algorithm that is, I think in some cases, really impersonal and not really going to be effective and quite possibly very damaging.
And Maura, just to get into this at a slightly more granular level of detail, the president does have authority to declare an emergency and therefore invoke tariffs. Any president can do that. But if you say it's an emergency and then the next day say it's still open to negotiation, well, what is it? A negotiation or an emergency? And I think that's what Rand Paul's driving at. And
I think that's exactly what he's driving at. His reasoning isn't passing the smell test, as my former boss, John Boehner, would say. And again, Rand Paul is right in that this needs to be a conversation about the merit of these tariffs and each one. Again, the blanket statements, the blanket tariffs, as opposed to looking into each individual case, is where Republican senators have a right to be frustrated with and can potentially bring that up to the president in these conversations, because we don't know that our allies or other countries are going to be coming to the negotiating table. We don't know that that's a possibility, sure, but there are no guarantees there, which leaves things kind of in an upheaval here.
I mean, you mentioned Senator Cory Booker. I don't want to gloss over this because he did something a little outside the box this week. He stood on the floor of the Senate for 25 hours. It wasn't a filibuster. It was just a long speech, a very long speech, a lot of letters from constituents. Does that carry any weight beyond this week? Is it something more than symbolic? Does it give Democrats a way of thinking about articulating this moment and perhaps galvanizing it in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was historic, and I think the senator deserves a lot of kudos for that. But I think here's the reality of that. I think people have asked Democrats to fight back. And Democrats, for a long time, for the last few months, have not known how to do that. And so I think Cory Booker is now laying out a new blueprint for how to be smart about fighting back. If there are moments where you can stop the train, you should stop the train. If there are moments you can be, you can offer a smarter perspective, you should do that. And so I think over the next couple months, you'll see in the states, the governors, the mayors are going to start doing a little bit more to stop Donald Trump's agenda.
And Maura, let's talk about this broader conversation around the economy in a way that I know the administration wants to. I'm not doing them any favors. I'm just articulating what they say out loud, which is tariffs are part of it, but we're also going to do deregulatory things, which Republicans support. We're going to cut taxes, which Republicans support, and those things in totality will make things better. Evaluate that part of the White House pushback.
Certainly. Well, the messaging there is important because we should be looking at ways to produce more things here. Manufacturing, deregulating so that we can have more manufacturing here. When I worked for Congressman Kinzinger, one of the bills we introduced was the Made in the Americas Act, and it was to incentivize companies to come to this hemisphere and receive some sort of incentive to do so through deregulation, through tax incentives, because we do want to have more American products, American-made products. Again, I think that looking at it through an individual basis as opposed to blanket policy is going to be really important. And this approach by the White House to try and couch the major concerns people are having with the tariff announcement last night is smart. They're also doing a bit of red meat. If you've heard the president talking about we're being taken advantage of, that is working with his base. So they're going to be willing to hang on a little longer. I think they're going to support the president, and you're seeing that with Mike Johnson and others in the House that aren't worried about losing their authority over having regulations or having the say in those things because they are giving the president the benefit of the doubt right now. But that's to be seen because we have a gubernatorial race coming up here in November with Virginia and New Jersey, and then, of course, down the road we have the midterms.
And Hyma, really for Democrats, what they have to hope for, because they lost this conversation in November on the economy, who's right? They lost it. That all the Democrats can hope for, structurally, maybe they nurse it along, but that there's buyer's remorse among those constituents that you once held that you lost to Trump.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're starting to see that. And I think one of the things that President Trump did was over-index on his relationship with Elon Musk. And Democrats have been very smart about making sure that Elon Musk and Donald Trump are the picture of dysfunction and bad governing. And so I think Democrats have to build on that. We can't just say Donald Trump is bad, his policies are bad. What is the agenda? What sort of policies will Democrats want to do to make the economy stronger? We know that Joe Biden did not wreck the economy. The economy was reeling from COVID. Donald Trump was the president at that time. And so we're going back into a phase where Donald Trump's telling us one thing, and we are literally watching another thing happen. I think the real question we have to ask, will this help our competitiveness? Will this make America more competitive in the global market? And I don't think it will. And I, like Tamara's point, we want to bring jobs back to this country. Democrats, Republicans, independents want to have good American jobs, but we also want to be competitive. We want to have good universities. We want to have good colleges and good hospitals. And we want to be innovative in AI and technology. And so some of the things that Donald Trump's been doing over the last couple months goes against that goal.
Hyma Maura Gillespie. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Major. Good to see you.